What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you a look at my 5 favorite classic RPGs. Now, a couple things to get out of the way. One, these are just RPGs across the board. In terms of subgenre, they kind of go all over the place, so just RPGs in general. They're also not in any particular order. These are just 5 of my favorites. And lastly, if you see any of these games and go, I don't think that's a classic, fair enough. That said, all of these games came out when I was between the ages of 5 and 10, and I'm pushing 30 now, so it is what it is. First up on our list, we have Divinity. Now, truthfully, this one surprised me, actually, because I used to make a ton of Divinity content because of Divinity Original Sin 2, so I went back and played every single Divinity game. And truthfully, of all of the older Divinity games, the very first one they ever made, Divinity, easily takes the cake. Has a very Diablo 2 kind of action feel to it in some cases. It kind of has that kind of real-time combat that you would see in an ARPG. However, there's a ton of choices you can make that you can build your character with. In some cases, there's even multiple ways through parts of the story, which, considering the age of the game, is pretty impressive. The main downside to Divinity, as good as it is frankly, getting it to run. It is a very difficult game to get to run on modern hardware. It isn't optimized for new stuff at all. I would highly recommend checking out some mods to help you out if you decide to give Divinity a try. That said, I do think it's worth the headache. It is genuinely a great game. Next up, we have, well, frankly, one of a lot of people's favorite classic games, and that is Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. I love this game. It is such a treat. It's definitely clunky in some places, but all the vampire clans, all of the ways you can approach quests, all of the various endings, including the joke ending. I have this game installed on my computer to this day, and I have beaten it with every clan multiple times. If you've never played it, it's very cheap, and I highly recommend you play through this game at least one time to see what everyone talks about when they talk about this game. That said, there are parts that are definitely clunky, and you basically have to get the unofficial patch to get the game to work, because the base version of it is straight up broken to this day, and playing it without that patch is basically playing an unplayable game. Third on our list, we have Oblivion. I love Oblivion. Oblivion is the first Elder Scrolls game I personally played. I did go back and play Morrowind and Daggerfall. That said, I never did bother with Arena, but Oblivion always kind of had that special place in my heart as just the Elder Scrolls game that I played first. I enjoy Morrowind. I think they did a better job world building in Morrowind than they did Oblivion. However, Morrowind's chance to hit something where you physically see that you're in first person hitting something, but the dice roll doesn't actually make you hit it, always bothered me tremendously. In CRPGs, which I cover much more frequently, that doesn't bother me as much because it's that top-down view. But when I'm in first person and I physically see something connect, but the dice roll behind the scenes tells me it doesn't hit, that always felt off to me. So because of that, I just never enjoyed Morrowind. Oblivion, on the other hand, I have so many hours in. And while I do actually have both Morrowind and Oblivion currently installed on my computer, Oblivion is just such a great game. And while I will say the leveling system as well as the level scaling is absolutely atrocious, the rest of the game is very well done, and I love it. And then we have Baldur's Gate 1. So, while Baldur's Gate 1 is not one of my favorite CRPGs across the board, which I've also made a video about, Baldur's Gate 1 is one of my favorite classics, and between the two older Baldur's Gate is actually my favorite. Honestly though, considering the technology they had at the time and everything when it comes to Baldur's Gate 1, they just did so much with so little, it's honestly impressive. But again, personally, I prefer the story and the simpler approach that Baldur's Gate 1 took, whereas Baldur's Gate 2 definitely leaned into a more high fantasy type stuff, whereas Baldur's Gate 1 feels a little more grounded in reality and is a lower level adventure, and as such, I honestly just enjoyed it more. And then last but not least, we have the original Kotor. Now this one was a toss-up between 1 and 2, but ultimately, after having played and reviewed both games, I'll say this. The original game has a much better intro than the second game does, because the Paragus mining facility is the worst. So because of that, I decided to go with Kotor 1, and while I do prefer some mechanics from the second game, ultimately, I have to admit I do prefer the first game overall. And as someone who plays a lot of Pathfinder, the D&D 3.5 edition adaptation that the Kotor games used felt very natural to me, so I took to those games immediately. and both of them are a blast to play, but personally I do prefer the first one. So there you go, guys. There are my top 5 classic RPGs. Now, I am under no illusion that this is a complete list by any means. There are so many great classic RPGs out there, so by all means drop your favorites down in the comment section below. But regardless of any of that, honestly, just thank you for watching, especially if you're listening to this message right here. Truly, thank you. May you wander in wisdom, and have an amazing day.